welcome to another episode of Just Cook It. I'm your host, Bassam Al-Alawi, aka Be The Maker on Instagram of Darcine Cafe at the Bahrain National Museum. I am so zenned out today to be hosting this amazing person, but also an amazing tea practitioner and master. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to do this.
I'm excited to taste. I've always been a fan of your teas. It is something that I consume on a daily basis. The tea is called matcha. Can you please tell us about matcha?
Yeah, matcha is a Japanese green tea that's shaded, and that's what differentiates it from other teas. It has a lot of amino acids and theanine, which can only be absorbed into your body with caffeine.
Right.
So it really helps you feel calm and relaxed, but also gives you energy. Not like coffee, where you get a crash, a high and a crash, but just kind of gradual. So it's really good to include it in food as well. You don't have to just drink it as tea.
I agree. I mean, I was trying to interrupt you there as well because I was agreeing so fervently. It is something that you recommended to me because of this simple Zen effect that you get. Caffeine, theanine, green tea, lovely. And sorry to interrupt you again, but this is not the green, like, you know how people talk about green tea and all its magical benefits and they take these like tea bag things? What's the difference?
A lot of differences actually. Matcha is completely different than the rest of the Japanese green teas or any other green teas, but also it's loose leaf green tea.
Right.
For the matcha though, it's powdered after it is picked and processed. It's powdered into this very like powdery substance. That's
fine
yeah,
too.
so what makes it different is that you're actually consuming the whole leaf that way. But with tea bags, you're just kind of dipping it in hot water and then you're removing it, right? Most of the benefits are not soluble, so you don't get that if you just use the tea bags, for example. But here you're actually eating the leaf, so you get things like vitamin E that you wouldn't get.
And you don't get that from a tea bag, ladies and gentlemen. You get that from authentic, shaded, grown matcha.
Yes.
And I mean, I've asked you this question before, and we've had this conversation, and I've learned a lot. Honestly, I hated matcha in the beginning because I didn't try the real stuff till I tried yours.
Yeah.
And what is ceremonial grade in terms of the plant itself and all that stuff?
So ceremonial grades depends on which plant they pick. It has to be from the top, so the bud, 2 leaves or 3 leaves from the top. If you keep going lower, the grade changes or degrades. You know, basically the ones on the bottom are used for culinary purposes, so like cooking and stuff like that. But most of the benefits are only in the ceremonial grade. That's why we drink it in the tea room.
Right.
So you can also use that if you use it properly without adding like dairy and things like that. You can actually.
Why not dairy?
Because if you mix dairy with the matcha, it flushes out the nutrition. So there's no point of using high-grade matcha.
Science, ladies and gentlemen. I love it. And I mean, we're going to be using matcha in this dish today.
Yes.
And I'm going to add the matcha based on your instruction at the end when it's not like bubbling around.
Yes, because we can't introduce it to extreme heat, otherwise it burns. So it has to be like between 80, maximum 90 Celsius. So it's better to add it at the end.
Okay, brilliant. Now, do you want to know what I'm making with your matcha today?
Please share.
Okay, so basically this is a traditional Bahraini. It's a sweet, I suppose, and it's called sagu.
Okay.
It's actually made from these like tiny little beautiful starch grains.
Oh, interesting. They look kind of like tapioca.
Indeed, and I think they're the same variety, if I'm not mistaken. This is the one thing I'm probably not sure about. What I understand, though, is it comes from the sagu palm.
Okay.
It's like this starch in the heart of the tree, right? And as soon as it hits the water, like tapioca, it swells up, it gets nice and gloopy and glutinous. So you mentioned you don't like using any artificial sweeteners, right? What are the alternatives in this case?
So you can use honey, maple, or date syrup.
Lovely. Look at that beautiful black ichor. Lovely.
I don't think that you should use any sugar when you use matcha because that kind of counteracts the effect, or basically you're putting something really healthy into your body and then you're doing sugar with it.
Amen. Don't cancel things out, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
And this is like, I think the reason I really wanted you to like say yes to being here today is that I think matcha is a great complement to the month of Ramadan in general.
Indeed, indeed. It's used to be used since the 12th century by monks to kind of meditate and recite their sutras.
Beautiful.
And I actually have a lot of people that use it when they read Quran or study Quran, and it just helps them stay alert and calm, and they can kind of go through
without being buzzed out.
Without being buzzed out.
So it's a zen, calm, but alert at the same time. And speaking of alert, let's be alert and make this sago. So I'm going to bring this to a boil, but in addition to this, you are going to serve and you're going to make an authentic bowl of matcha, right?
Yes, just to show how you can actually drink this in its pure form.
Lovely.
You can actually eat it with dates when you break your fast, so it could be the first thing that you
That's
break
incredible.
your fast with.
Yep.
So it can kind of bring the nutritions back with the dates plus the matcha. And usually matcha is drank alongside a dessert that's Japanese desserts are also made using natural sugar called kurosato, which is like raw form or black sugar if it translate it. So if you eat a piece of date, that's like natural sugar, and then you can have your matcha with it to kind of bring the nutrition back.
Phenomenal.
So let's see how to make it.
There is something else though. I mean, in terms of all these materials, right? They're very specific. They're not just there for the fun of it, right?
Exactly, yes.
So why are you using this bowl?
So we use this, it's called a chawan bowl. And actually,
Chawan as in Chawan Authentic Japanese Tea
Yes.
House? There you go.
And I actually started working with local artists to actually produce this in Bahrain, so it will be made in Bahrain 100%.
I love that so much.
So the one that we're going to drink out of today is made in Dilmun pottery.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So we will try. And then we have the whisk. This is called a chasen. So it's a bamboo whisk that we use to introduce oxygen to the matcha so it becomes very frothy. That way it's really smooth to drink.
Okay, brilliant.
And
so
then,
it has purpose.
Yes, of course.
Like most things Japanese.
And then we use this kind of scoop or spoon. It's called a chashaku. And we use 2 of these as a daily amount, or like an amount per person.
Right.
It actually it equals to half a teaspoon. So if you don't have this, you could just use half a teaspoon.
Automatic measuring.
Exactly.
It takes the kind of guesswork out of it.
Exactly.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
about 1 gram. So if you like to.
And I noticed, as I rudely interrupted you yet again, basically this has your brand on it.
Yes.
What makes this matcha specifically that you're going to be using today special?
Because I source it from organic farms that I actually been to and worked with the farmers to ensure that I source matcha.
And that's rare.
Yes.
That is rare.
So I've tried the matcha before I brought it here. I've been to the factory and made sure that, I'm not just selling a product. It's a product that I personally believe in and can put my name on.
I think this brings up something really important. We talked about this in our coffee episode. Technically, what you're doing is not even fair trade, it's direct trade. You're working directly with farmers.
Exactly.
There's no middleman jacking up the prices and you're like, what's going on? This stuff is expensive.
Yeah, and people don't understand that the process that matcha has to go through to be produced is actually very lengthy. So matcha, even in Japan, is costly.
Right.
Yes.
But it's a necessary luxury, I find.
Yes.
It's not one of these like luxurious items that you can do without. If you do add it to your life, there is a lot of benefit, especially in this month, okay, where we need focus, we need zen, we need to calm down.
I think you need it every day.
I have 3 cups a day, and you were like, that's the maximum you can have.
Yeah, I mean, having a cup a day would be really good to kind of calm you down, take the stress out of the day off, and you could just kind of take a moment to be in the moment.
Hallelujah. Grateful and present.
Okay, so I've added 2 chashaku of matcha.
Right?
And then the water temperature has to be between 80 to 85.
Why?
So that we don't burn the matcha. If you add extremely hot water, the matcha is going to get bitter. Okay.
And that is important.
It's very important.
Because people make judgments based on the wrong use of matcha.
So if you use really hot water, it's going to be really bitter. You're not going to like it. You could also make this as a cold brew. So basically, you just add cold water to it.
It's the way I like it, with some ice.
Yeah, actually, most men prefer it that way.
Really?
Yeah, it's very it's much sweeter that way.
We like sweet things. What can I say?
So the water, when you use this tea bowl, you're gonna just add 1/4 of the cup, which is about 80 milligrams of water. And make sure you heat up the bowl first. I already did it prior to us starting.
Nice.
And also for the chasan, you have to whisk it in hot water so it kind of expands. Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, it won't be like it'll be very hard on it, and when you whisk, it might break. Okay, and then you basically just have to move your wrist. Usually we do this with our right hand, but for today I'm left-handed.
Brilliant people usually are.
I do it with my right hand during ceremonies, but just want to clarify, this is not a ceremony, so I'm just showing how to use it. And then you're just going to move your wrist up and down until you create a layer of foam.
And I mean, I gotta say, the color is so bright,
It
right?
should be. That's how it should be. So if the color is not a bright, that's an indication of a bad grade or an expired, not expired, but really old tea.
Okay, nice.
Okay, and then you just want to make sure you don't have a lot of big bubbles because that creates air.
You
and
did that
don't-
in like a minute. I have to do it for like, like maybe 2-3 minutes at home, and then I'm like, my wrist hurt, and she did it in this like smooth Zen process.
It takes time, and then you get used to it, and then it becomes faster.
Okay, perfect.
Would you like to drink?
I would definitely like to drink, but I do want to ask you one thing.
Yes.
I saw you earlier kind of take the tea and kind of sift it a little bit.
Yes. It's really important to sift the matcha prior. So I had sifted it and placed it into the container before we started, and that eliminates any clumping.
Right.
So when you do that, you don't need to, sometimes you see people adding matcha and then adding a little bit of water and then whisking it and then adding water. The proper way is to just sift the matcha, add it, and then whisk one time.
Lovely, and I'm gonna have me a cup of matcha.
Dozo.
Thank you. Ooh.
So just pick up the bowl, place it on your left hand,
Left hand.
and then turn it clockwise twice, and that's
Clockwise.
Yes, that's part
1,
of the tea manner.
2.
And then you just drink, and then if you liked it, make a slurp on the end. That means that it was really delicious.
A slurp?
Yeah, like a.
That's gonna sound great on camera. Look at that. The water that I mentioned is coming up to a boil. This is like a nice simmer. I'm gonna reduce it just a little bit because I don't want it to overboil, right? I'm gonna add, so this is about what? About 700, 800 mLs of water, if not a liter, right? I'm gonna add about a cup of sago. And you wanna add just as much as you want in terms of like starchiness. Too much, and if you whisk too much, it just releases all of that starch and it turns into goop. And that's okay for Bahraini style, but what Bahrainis do in terms of sago is they usually caramelize sugar, then pour water so it gives this nice amber color. Then they add the sago and beat it up until it's like a gelatinous, almost like a halwa texture.
Oh, okay.
Local Bahrain, but I don't like it. I like to see those pearls in there, right? And I've added as much sago as I think this can handle at this point. And I'm just gonna give it a nice stir. And if I feel like this needs anything else, or in terms of sago, I will add more, right? At this point, I do like to add the date molasses, right? And matcha is gonna be left till the exact end, when this slightly cools down a bit, because you mentioned if you put hot water with matcha, you turn it bitter.
Yes.
You don't want that.
Perfect.
All right,
We're sweetening it first.
we're sweetening it first, exactly. Using about a 1/4 cup. And I'm gonna keep tasting this. If I feel like it needs more sweetness, I will add some more. At this point, you can actually add some vanilla extract, not essence. I mean, if you got essence, add the essence, it's fine. But I mean the extract, way better, because it's made from actual vanilla beans. If you're gonna be using real matcha, real sago,
Better go all the way.
go all the way, or why not? Or home. Go home is what they say, right? All right, so I'm gonna mix this up just a little bit. Now, in addition to that sweet element, do you wanna add as much salt as you think is necessary?
Hands.
You can use your hands.
Sanitized hands.
Sanitized hands.
I think just a little bit of salt kind of brings out.
Like that much?
I usually just put a little bit of salt, like a pinch of salt.
Right.
In most Japanese desserts, we use just a pinch of salt to kind of bring the sweetness out.
And it really does. Allows you to taste everything in the dish,
True.
right?
It does really make a difference. So, Bassam, how long do we have to cook it for until it's ready?
Good question. About 30 to 45 minutes, depending on the size of the sago. I've chosen a small one, right?
I can see that it's starting to clear up a little bit.
Absolutely. I mean, look at that. I like a tiny bit of white in there because it gives it a chewiness that I like. I don't like it to turn into like gloop, right? So I think we can start to add all of our lovely additives right now, excluding the matcha,
Okay, yeah.
right?
How do you know it's ready though?
I mean, if you look at it, if you stare at it, it's like you have this translucent
I see
circle.
it's clearing up.
Exactly, with a tiny white dot in the middle, right?
Basically, the smaller the white dot gets,
The more,
you are.
exactly.
Okay.
And I'm not doing, traditionally, this is kind of beaten up at this point, and that kind of turns it into a jelly-like texture. More like traditional Bahraini halwa, but I don't want that today.
Doing the Bassam version of that.
Well, the Bassam X Chawan version, all right? And I think now is a good time. And we've added, by the way, off camera, we kept tasting it,
Yeah.
and we added more date molasses. Not too sweet, but just sweet enough.
So basically, they add it to their preference.
Exactly. I'm gonna just lower this a little bit because it's starting to boil. And at this point is the time that I add the oat milk, right? And
You can use any kind of
Plant
Dairy
milk, yeah,
Okay.
any kind of non-dairy milk. I don't like to use almond milk because almond milk has residual fat in it. And then as soon as it hits something, it splits and it smells weird,
Okay.
right?
Have you tried to make it with cashew milk? Do you think that would work?
It would work beautifully because cashew is very creamy.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, immediately you can see it's turned into this like milky, creamy concoction.
Oishiso.
I know, right? Okay, so now since it's not boiling anymore and I've added a cold liquid to a hot one, it's dropped the temperature. All right? At this point, I will also add, this again is a recommendation. I asked you this question, does rose water go well with matcha?
Yes, it does, and it's really important to understand what pairs well with the teas that you're using for cooking to kind
Right.
of complement the flavor.
And this is something that you do at the tea house.
Yes.
You guys, Chawan, the authentic Japanese tea house, is the only authentic Japanese tea house on the island, right? What do you do there in terms of product, service, tea?
So they can actually go online and see the different services that are available, but it's basically giving a tea experience, and there are various tea experiences that they can choose from, ones that include traditional Japanese sweets or Japanese food alongside with a tea that complements the flavor, or they can come for classes to learn how to make or how to make cookies.
And if they want to taste this matcha and kind of get a first-hand like account/experience, they can come to the tea house as well,
For sure.
right? Now you mentioned something really interesting, pairing teas with food.
Yes.
Now you have given me that experience. I've had the privilege of experiencing this, and it makes a huge difference.
It does. So tea can either complement the food or kind of kill some of the flavor or
Yeah.
make it worse as well. So it's really important to understand what kind of notes it brings up.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's kind of like cooking as well. When you're adding spices to a dish.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We like this parallel.
Exactly.
Okay, do you want to add a bit of rose water based on what you think?
I'm not sure we'd have to taste it, right?
I think that's perfect. That's perfect. And I tend to add rose water always at the end of cooking. Rose water has very delicate aromatic principles, right? Heat, overheating kills them and changes the flavor.
Okay, interesting.
Now, again, in case those of you who are like, this is not traditional sago, well, it's not supposed to be, okay? I want it slightly on the watery side, right? Because as it cools, it will thicken as well. So I'm kind of thinking about that in advance,
Okay,
right?
Interesting.
Now, how about we give this a taste? Grab one of your spoons, give it a taste, check the sugar, see if it needs more oat milk. If the rose water isn't too apparent, let me know. The moment of truth, ladies and gentlemen.
It's very sweet.
How sweet.
I think it's perfect. It's too sweet for my preference, but
Right.
I think, are we adding more milk?
Perfect, so we can.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I'm adding more of this beautiful
I like
oat
how
milk.
the pearls kind of just melt in your mouth.
Right? They're tender. They're more tender than like something with more bite, like chia seeds, for example.
Yeah.
Or tapioca, which is slightly larger. It kind of
So
swells up more.
What was the difference between that and tapioca? Because they're kind of very similar to tapioca, but smaller.
That's a great question, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, sago comes from the sago palm, while tapioca comes from cassava, which is a root vegetable, right? It's the starch from that.
Okay.
They have, to me at least, they have different like textures, but similar in terms of their gelling power and all that.
It's really interesting.
So I think this is almost there. I'm just going to let it come to a boil.
The color is really nice.
I know it's a beautiful golden ambery color, right? And it's comforting to look at, and it makes the house smell amazing. At this point, we had discussed that you can add more traditional spices like cardamom. I don't want to because cardamom is quite strong, and we are going to put some nuts on top. We've got walnuts. I've chosen sesame seeds, not traditionally used with sago, but I think I took it a little bit of the Japanese.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that would be nice.
I got some really green Austrian pumpkin seeds. These
That would go well.
you can like eat them directly, and these are great. I like green pumpkin seeds. They have a really high count of polyunsaturated fatty acids. Also, to go with the health vibe that we're trying to do here.
So it's really good to eat this during Ramadan because we used healthy ingredients. as
Phenomenally
well.
good.
But also, you mentioned like it has some health benefits as well, the sago itself, right?
For me at least, and for the people I know who have spoken to, and generally people who are into nutrition, it is fantastic because as a starch, it coats the stomach. It allows, if people with ulcers or acidity issues can have this. Maybe perhaps with not as much sugar, but generally,
It's very gentle on the skin.
it's like very cold and soothing on your insides. And that's why I think it's also more appropriate for Ramadan. I mean, coupled with matcha, I would consider it a superfood,
Perfect.
right? Okay, this will continue to boil. How about you make us another cup of tea? And we've decided, via discussion, ladies and gentlemen, that we will pour the frothy tea on top.
Yes, because at this point, since we use the date molasses, the color is brown, so that's going to overtake. And the matcha won't show. But if you're using a different type of sweetener that will allow us to kind of allow it to be more see-through or transparent, then we can add the matcha and it'll turn green.
Exactly. So if you use, for example, a light agave,
Exactly.
this will give you that clearer, you know?
And then it will be green instead of this beautiful golden or amber color.
Lovely. It's like the color of liquid dates. So it's
Yes.
taken on the color of the molasses.
Exactly.
All right. So make us a cup, and when we're back, we're going to be plating this up, and it's going to be delicious, ladies and gentlemen. See you in a bit. So our sago has come up to a beautiful boil. It's all translucent. We've shut off the heat. That's just residual heat making it boil, right? You got this beautiful mango wood bowl, also supporting of local communities, but not in this country, but local communities nonetheless. I'm going to take and gently put some of that sago in the middle. You guys, if you're worried that it's a little too watery or liquidy, don't worry about it. As it cools, it will thicken just a little bit, right? And people like warm sago or cold sago, it doesn't matter.
So now if we put it in the fridge, does it become bigger or?
I mean, it'll absorb more of that water, so it will swell up just a little bit, but not as big as tapioca.
Kind of like chia seeds.
Exactly. It's actually the exact size of a chia seed without a seedy center.
Okay.
So it's very easy and smooth. You mentioned something off camera. You were like, these melt in the mouth.
Yeah, they do.
That's exactly the point. What do you think? Do you think we need to add more, or that's good?
I think that's good.
Lovely. And now you're going to dress it up for us, right? So you've made a very a slightly thickened version of matcha,
Yeah.
right? And you're going to use it as a condiment. Do you want to use a spoon, or you're going to pour it around? What do you want to do?
We can just pour it from the chawan bowl itself.
Okay.
But I'm a little worried that it might not sit on the top.
Well, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
Okay, it actually sits.
Look at that. That is an effect. I love that. Don't do nothing.
That looks like a piece of art.
Doesn't it? Look at that. Can you see this on camera, y'all? Beautiful.
So it is thick enough so a layer can be forming on top.
And I don't think you should mess with that design because it looks like raku,
It does.
like Japanese
it does
pottery.
look like raku, yes.
Okay,
That's
so
really cool.
do you want to plate some? Use some of those.
So what would you recommend to put?
My grandmama used to always use walnuts, right? You can toast these. These are untoasted, but you can use them.
Okay, so should we just kind of...
Yeah,
do it
surround
around?
this beautiful thing.
Okay.
And as it cools, if you find that some of the condiments are sinking, don't worry about it. Okay, just let it cool a little bit, and you can float stuff on top.
Kind of like making a super food bowl.
Exactly. Just warm. And it uses a traditional Bahraini dessert that's, I don't really find it too healthy. There's a lot of sugar in it, right? At least this is more, gentle. It maintains the health benefits, and you're combining things that in and of themselves, have a lot of benefit for your health, right?
It's really interesting. Should we continue or just leave it like that?
I actually think this is wonderful.
It looks cool like
I
that.
think so.
I think we just made art accidentally.
I think so. The best kind of art, ladies and gentlemen. MoMA, here we come.
Should we pour a little maple? Or?
Sure. I think you should just follow the line of this,
Yeah,
because I don't the integrity of that.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna try to be careful.
Beautiful. And we've used a maple syrup sweetener, a grade A maple, and this is a sweetener of choice for you. You do like to use it.
Yes, maple actually pairs really well with matcha. It
Right.
doesn't overpower the flavor, or I think it works best. That and agave. Date syrup actually also works good, but it's not gonna allow the matcha to be as strong flavored.
Agreed.
But you're still gonna get the benefits of it.
And you have that like smoky notes of the maple. You know what? I am so grateful and very blessed today to be spending this time making this beautiful dish with you and tasting this amazing matcha.
Thank you for this experience, and I'm happy to be here.
I know, and I love how we made like accidental art, right? Like I'll be trying to make this again.
Okay.
And ladies and gentlemen, this was Badur Steele of Chawan, Authentic Japanese Tea House. Thank you so much for being with us today. Make sure to follow this recipe. You gotta make this at home. I've told you this in every episode because I mean it. And it's unique, it's different, and it's a cool take on a Bahraini classic. You guys have a blessed Ramadan. Stay safe, stay blessed, and stay grateful. See you next episode. Thank you.